Everybody, this is Axel, and I wanted to do a video showing how I go about doing corrections. Also because in the past, I was only doing corrections through documents. So what would happen is a student would send me their writing. I would then put it into the Google Documents. And then between using my own system for applying the corrections, as well as like the commenting system in Google, I would make all of my changes and then I would send that back to the student. However, I think it would be much more effective if I did videos showing me do the corrections. So you'll be able to now hear me talk. You'll be able to hear my direct feedback while I'm doing the corrections. And then at the end as well, also, you'll be able to receive this document. So you'll have like the notes of everything that I come up with. Yeah, so somebody has written me a C1 advanced essay. So here, just to show you, I'm going to be looking at their work and I'll do the correction like I normally would. And so you'll be able to see that process. And maybe you'll also be able to learn something as well, just about how to write a good C1 advanced essay, what is expected in that kind of type of task. Yeah, so just a really quick explainer, when you book a correction from myself, what I'll do is I will actually send you a list of tasks that you can choose from. So you can see here that I've compiled a list of a selection of C1 advanced tasks. I also have documents for like the B2 first exam. And I think there's like 8 or 10 different types of each kind of question. So it's a pretty good balance. Also Linguaskills. I have tasks for both Linguaskill General, Linguaskill Business, which is phenomenal because it's so hard to find practice tasks online, right? So yeah. So I'll be able to, and IELTS as well. I also have IELTS tasks. But yeah, so I will send you a link to a document. You'll be able to pick and choose one that you want to do, or if you have chosen a task from somewhere else, that's fine as well. The only thing that I request is that you send me the question that you've responded to. So I will know exactly what I'm marking and have that information. Okay, so when you send me your work, what happens first is I have like this template document, and then I put in the question. So you can see here that I've already inputted the question that this person responded to. And then down here, I have put in the response that they sent me. Yeah, and then also I have this second document open. And in this document, I'm going to be keeping our notes. And then at the end, I'm going to put all of that information back into this main document, which becomes a PDF, which you will receive along with this video of the correction. Okay, perfect. So let's get started. So the first thing that I do before correcting, before even really looking at the work, is I always like to check the word count. And so we can see here, we have 221 words, and that does fall within the range of 220, 260 words. So I just want to say something. So for like the C1 advanced, the B2 first exam, that word limit is only a guideline. So we can write less words, we can go over. As long as we're including all of the information, it's absolutely fine to have less words. And we can also go over a little bit. The only thing we don't want to do is add additional irrelevant information, because that will actually impact your mark. So these guidelines here are only to help us sort of have an idea of, how many words we should be writing in order to accomplish everything we need to do for the task. And if I have any IELTS people watching, because I know that I do have IELTS students sometimes, in IELTS you will be penalized for not reaching the word length. Okay, so in C1 Advanced, B2 first, there is only a guideline. As long as the question is answered, it's fine. For IELTS, on the other hand, you will get penalized for writing less words. Okay. All right, perfect. So we do know though that, however, that this is within the word length. So I'm just going to click that off there. And then what I do is I actually look at the question first before even like looking at the essay. So I'm going to read it, and it's going to tell us exactly what we need to write about in our work. So here, your class has had a discussion about the importance of stories for young children. So we know that we're going to be writing about stories for young children, the importance. You've made the following notes below. So ways in which stories for young children are important: entertainment, education, and social values. So all of the exam tasks for the C1 Advanced are set up exactly in the same way. We have to pick 2 of these prompts, not 3. If we respond to all 3, then we've actually added additional irrelevant information, and we will get penalized for that. So we need to select 2 out of 3 of these ideas to respond to. So I'm just going to make a note of that. So entertainment, education, social values, and then they always give us a few opinions. So some opinions express this discussion: stories are fun, stories develop children's vocabulary, children find out the difference between right and wrong. And we do not have to make use of these opinions. So they're only there to help us, maybe give us some ideas if we want. However, if we do make use of these opinions, or really like any time that we are responding to a task, we always need to make sure that we are paraphrasing. So we were putting things into our own words. And just a note, paraphrasing doesn't mean that we have to absolutely change every single word. Some words can be the same. It will be, for example, if I'm writing about entertainment, I expect to see the word entertainment a few times in this essay. However, I also expect you to be able to come up with other ways to sort of express the same idea as well, and just to show that we can vary our language, right? So these are always going to get paraphrased. So write an essay for your tutor discussing 2 of the ways in which your story for young children are important from your notes. So we need to get like 2 out of these. So it's right there. And then you should explain which way you think is more important. So that is really important. So we need to make sure that our opinion is obvious. And we also need to provide reasons with an S, reasons for your opinion. So reason 1, reason 2. So, and that's the base of like what we're looking for. Also, we know that we're writing an essay, so it's going to have formal language. And also we know that an essay typically follows an essay style format. So for example, we're going to have an introduction. And that introduction is typically going to have some sort of introductory phrase that that refers to the question. So it refers to the question, refers to the problem, and also to get like higher scores under communicative achievement, we should try to consider using some language or some sort of like hook or something, just to sort of make it a bit more engaging for readers. And I just want to say something as well, because I know that I might have IELTS people watching this. On IELTS, we don't want hooks. So no hooks. Hooks are only good for C1 Advanced, B2 first. So, and a hook could be potentially like a rhetorical question or some kind of, I don't know, interesting idea maybe that you have or something like that, just as something to sort of like engage the reader into our work and sort of like introduce that topic in a really nice way. And then our introduction should also touch on the 2 points we're going to talk about. And so that's kind of important. We want to make sure that the examiner knows exactly what's coming. And on that note as well, I like to say what the opinion is right up front. And I'm going to I know that on the C1 advanced, B2 first exam, a lot of people save their opinion until the very end, which is okay, it's very common in this kind of exam, or sorry, in this kind of task for those exams. However, sometimes people forget it. So, I don't think putting the opinion right up front is a bad idea. Have it right there so the examiner knows exactly what's coming. There's no surprises, and you know that you have covered everything, right? So if you put it right into the introduction, that's one check off the list, you won't miss it later. So that's what I recommend doing. Yeah, and then we also know that we just need typical body paragraphs, ideally 2 for this, and then also a conclusion. Okay, and the conclusions usually reiterates the 2 main points again, as well as our opinion. And also conclusions do not contain new information. Another little important thing as well. If I can get those boxes back. There we go. All right, so this is basically what we're going to be looking for. All right, so let's move on to the actual exam question. Excuse me. Okay, and so just looking at first glance, I am a little worried because we have an introduction, 1 body paragraph, and what looks like a conclusion. Okay. And I'm not going to say that that's wrong. It is definitely possible to write a high scoring essay with only 1 body paragraph and an introduction and a conclusion. It's definitely possible. However, it does worry me a little bit. Typically, we get better points for organization. If we have 1 paragraph dedicated to 1 point, 2nd paragraph dedicated to the other point, they're sort of tied together because they all relate back to the opinion, and then we have our conclusion. So at first glance, I am a little bit worried. I won't lie, but let's read it and see what happens. Okay. Okay, great. So stories are of great importance for children. Okay, they offer a source of fun and entertainment. So it looks like here is the first point that we're probably going to be talking about. Fun and entertainment, which is a valuable aspect when it comes to children's activities, but they also represent a way to learn common social values. So it looks like those are going to be our 2 points. So these are the 2 points that I'm expecting to hear about in the rest of the essay. I'm going to leave education here, so we don't want to talk about it, but I'm just going to leave it up here because some people do go into talk about the 3rd point, but that's a no-no. Okay, so let's keep going. So books and cartoons for young children always have elements. So I'm just going to right off the bat, we're talking about cartoons. Typically when we're talking about stories, we're talking more like books and fairy tales and maybe even storytelling, legends and that sort of things. So I know that a lot of cartoons are based on stories potentially, but typically when we're talking about stories, it's more expected that we're talking about books and narration, the retelling of events and things like that. Yeah, typically through books or maybe through oral, through speaking and things like that. So books and cartoons for young children always have elements more or less explicit that refer to social values such as respect, honesty, generosity, empathy, inclusion, and many more. So just off the bat here, so we have a such as here. So saying like such as, when we say such as, we know that it's going to be like a list of examples following that. So saying and much more is actually, it's actually redundant. So I'm just going to get rid of that. There you go. So, and conclusion, and then finish it. So I'm just going to put that in there. So we don't need that. And inclusion. They're often portrayed as the right thing to do and pursue. So first off, to me, this there is very vague. I'm not entirely sure, like, what. The books and the cartoons are portrayed as the right or thing to do, but that doesn't really make sense. We can talk about how a character is portrayed in a film, for example, or through books. So, the kind of characterization, the characteristics, the things they do, how they speak, all of that. We can talk about how the writer has developed that character and the portrayal of that character. But we can't really say, it doesn't really make sense that books or cartoons are portrayed in a certain way, or at least not in this, like the books don't have the right, or I think you're talking about like the content sort of like sort of portrays or exhibits the right or wrong thing to do for children. So this is really vague. So I would just clarify this. Clarify this. Who is they? So we're really specific. They're often portrayed as the right thing to do and pursue. Positive and negative characters are usually part of the two categories, maybe like the two respective categories. The two, I would add like a respective in there. The two categories, because again, I don't feel like that's specific enough. The two respective categories, according to their compliance with such values. Through the actions and reactions of the characters, children learn what's commonly seen as good or wrong in society. And here as well, the common collocation that we would say would actually be right or wrong, or good or bad. Good or bad, right or wrong, good or bad. Those would be like the correct collocation to make here. I mean, what you wrote is not wrong. I'm just saying that like we would actually write this would be like the better wording. So right or wrong, good or bad in our society. For example, in Disney's Robin Hood, which is one of the most beloved animated movies by the renowned company, the hero and all his company are very generous, and they put their own lives at risk in order to pursue justice and protect the weakest, whereas their enemies are greedy, selfish, and vile, and they're depicted as very unlikable. So yes, this makes sense. However, my problem with this sentence is that it's really, really long. So I always try to like recommend that when we're writing, we should really be sticking to like 2-3 sort of ideas max per sentence. And then we move on. And then if we have additional things to say, we can use linking words to connect another sentence to it. So, yeah. So this is too long. So this is a run-on sentence. I would recommend dividing it and using some linking words to connect the two sentences together. And yeah, that will actually help under organization. That'll help boost your marks. So for example, I might do, let's see, I'm just going to copy it and add my sort of like my suggested. What I would do, I'd do maybe. So, for example, in Disney's Robin Hood, which is one of the most beloved animated companies of the renowned company, the hero and all his company are very generous, and they put their own lives at risk in order to pursue justice and protect the weak. Period. See, ideally, like you could even hear it as I was reading. I was running out of breath, right? Like just like dying for a comma or a period or something. So I think ideally I probably would like just end this here, but I'm going to put the period here, and then I'm going to get rid of this whereas, or get rid of this whereas, and I'm going to replace it with like, on the other hand, for example, their enemies are greedy, selfish, and vile, and they're depicted as very unlikable. So there, now we have like the two sort of those two ideas, and instead we're using linking words to link one sentence back to the one that came before it. So during the whole movie, children can see that kind of behavior makes you a decent person, and they're encouraged to emulate the good. Okay, so all of this, I mean, other than the run-on sentence, was very well written. And it makes real sense. You've included a lot of really nice, great selection of vocabulary. One thing, however, we were talking about staying on topic, and sort of going back to the cartoon thing, we're talking about cartoons, we're talking about movies. Just gonna highlight these. We have cartoons, we're talking about movies. However, we're supposed to be talking about stories. And so I can kind of understand, because you're kind of taking the word like story and sort of broadening it a bit to just mean maybe like the narration, or like what, like the plot that happens in something. And so, cartoons, movies, TV shows, books, they definitely all have plots. But typically when we think about stories, we're really specifically thinking about books, or maybe storytelling, like some sort of like an oral thing. So we should really be just talking about books. So, and that would have been really easy to potentially correct, because I think that Robin Hood is based on some sort of like a story, or some sort of, I don't know, fairy tale or something, isn't it? I'm sure it's based on a book. So that would have been really easy, like kind of really easy to do. So I do feel like we've kind of veered off topic here. So that would probably, they probably would not like that. My spell checker is underlining this as being incorrect. However, it is correct. It's just that in the United States, we don't use, they don't use the U, but this is absolutely fine. So don't worry that is marked incorrectly. And we've already reached the conclusion. So in conclusion, reading, watching, and listening to stories represent a powerful tool to teach important social values to children in a stimulating and enjoyable way. Okay, so we've talked a ton about social values, but we have not talked anything about entertainment. So, and I know you actually commented to me and you said that you had trouble reading, kind of reaching the word length. And that's really because you didn't, if you had addressed the second bullet, you would have had no problem reaching the word length. So I think that's your problem. I know this is probably, I think this is like, you told me this is like your, I don't know, second or third essay or something like that. And nobody really looked at the first ones that you did. But so you're gonna have to make sure that you really read carefully the prompt, make sure that you're getting in everything you need. So, and also another thing as well, like you have not, I mean, other than the fact that you have just only talked about one issue, which means that to you is the most important,
you really didn't make any comparison. It's like, it's not even possible because like you didn't even talk about like the second point. So there's no comparison. We're missing that. We're missing content about education. Sorry, entertainment. We're missing a reason. We're missing our reasons. Okay, so those are definitely going to impact your score. However, it was formal language. The tone I felt was very appropriate to writing an essay. We also have we did have an introduction that, touched on the 2 points. We could have made it stronger using a rhetorical question or something. Like, we could have done something a little bit more interesting than just stories are great importance to children. So, but we do have an introduction, it's fine. We do have an obvious body paragraph, and we do have an obvious conclusion. Although in this case, it did not reiterate the 2 points as well as the opinion because there was none. So, but we do have one. Okay, so let's go. I'm just going to go now, and I'm going to make notes of my observations, and then I'm going to make some recommendations. So to review of the writing. So under the content, that's basically all of these things. So content, it was on topic. However, you have not expanded on the second point at all. Also, it is missing an opinion or reasons for that opinion. Also, you somewhat veered off topic, speaking about movies and cartoons when we really should have been speaking or writing about stories and books and potentially storytelling. Sitting around the campfire telling stories, or I don't know, that sort of thing. So communicative achievement typically has to do with like the style, how it was written, the kind of phrases that we use and that sort of thing. So communicative achievement. So the register was formal and appropriate for the task. It was nice that it was nice neutral language. There were no use of personal pronouns. For example, I noticed that a lot of reading a lot of these essays, a lot of people will use a lot of I think and in our society and but we can really using first person pronouns are typically considered more of an informal thing. So to make it really formal, we want to get away from that and use more passive language, more general statements and things like that. So you did do a good job with using a neutral tone and avoiding those pronouns. However, I will say one thing. So in formal writing, we want to avoid using contractions. And I know that what's commonly, so we need to, contractions would be fine if this was an informal task. So for example, maybe we were writing a letter to a friend, or if we were doing an article or a review. But yeah, we typically want to they're typically not supposed to be used in informal writing. So avoid the use of contractions. So that is one thing. Also, okay. So it is really clear that you know how to write. You know how to write straightforward sentences, and you can also
write more complex sentences with like relative clauses and things of that nature. Like you've shown that, you know, through this sentence, for example, where you had like been able to piece like a number of things together and it all made sense, as well as like other parts in this essay as well. However, to get like a higher score, you know, I would suggest varying your language. Like, so for example, maybe I'll just like write it down in the recommendations. So to get a higher score, consider using more like lesser known, maybe lesser known sentence structures, or like more complex sentence structures. And so you're like, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean like maybe concessions, or where we talk about like a counter argument before bringing in our own argument, for example, concessions or passive language. So example, it is the children that benefit most from blah, 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 like that sort of thing. Or for example, like an inversion, like not only are stories important for blah, 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 but they are also like those sort of like phrases, as well as comparisons as well, like those sort of like so using those kinds of forms, even if you're not 100% sure about it, they will boost your score. So I just want to like say that yeah, when we're writing the C1 advanced, the B2 first exam, even if we're not like 100% confident with using a form, we will still get rewarded for trying them. And also the same with using more like high level, more complex vocabulary words. We will also get rewarded for attempting to use that kind of language. In IELTS, on the other hand, do not take any risks. So we do want to take risks on the C1 advanced and the B2 first exam, no risks on the IELTS exam, okay? So in this case, yeah, using a variety of different, of those different structures to show that you're really capable of writing with flexibility and playing around with language is going to really like boost your score. So I would definitely recommend looking at some of those forms, getting familiar with them, and then trying to like incorporate them in your language, or in your writing. Okay, so what else we have on? But otherwise, I mean, nice. I mean, what you wrote was nice. It's just like you could have definitely pushed it to be like a bit more interesting, a bit more complex. Yeah. So so organization, it was organized. Organized appropriately, no problems with punctuation, right? The flow of ideas made sense, and the ideas were logical. You used appropriate linking words and connectors to join ideas together. Although, as I did note, like sometimes it wasn't 100% clear, so you can definitely work on like making some of those things clearer. But for the most part, you did do like a pretty nice job. Yeah, like it was a nice like progression. Yeah. So inappropriate paragraphing. Did I see that? Yeah, the fact that you did use paragraphs, like that's great. Appropriate paragraphs and stuff like that. So that all goes under organization. Language also, so nice use of language, nice use of phrasing, great use of collocations. I know there was like I think I like this one. I was like, oh, you could do this instead. Oh, here as well, actually, I would have done like the weak instead of the weakest. That also would have been like a bit more common, but I mean, like, they're not huge things. And obviously there are no big mistakes. So there's nothing that impedes communication, which is really important. Nothing that impedes understanding your communication. And also you've used some really nice, like, high-level vocabulary. High-level vocabulary, and that was used accurately. So, for example, empathy and inclusion often portrayed their compliance with such values. Children learn what's commonly seen. Renowned company, beloved animated movies. Like, these are all like really fantastic examples of language that's really going to boost your score. I mean, the only thing is that, like, language and the communication, like the phrasing of sentences and how complex they are, they sort of like come together. So that's the only thing. Like, try to use more complex sentences to vary your writing. That would be my big recommendation there. Actually, I'm going to put it, yeah, down here. Okay, yeah. So what are my recommendations? So my recommendations are going to be to read the task really carefully to make sure that you fully understand it. And I know that you said this is only like your first or second. So I think just become more familiar with the format of C1 advanced essays will help you. Yeah, because it's obvious your biggest problem here is just that you did not get everything you needed done. So this is a really simple fix. And so once you have like the task figured out, the best course of action when doing an essay is actually try to spend, and like, I don't know if you did this, but try to spend the first 5, even like 10 minutes planning what you're going to say. So brainstorming vocabulary also falls under that, but the brainstorming vocabulary, choosing your points and your examples. And you can even make like maybe like potentially like a little checklist similar to like what I did up top here. Just to make sure that, make a checklist to make sure that you have all the task achieved, like all the task, all the tasks. Yeah, make sure that you have all the tasks covered in your work. So I think that's going to be like your biggest thing. That's the easiest way to boost your score. It's definitely doing that. And then, yeah, like I said earlier, try to use more of those lesser known complex structures. In fact, I saw like sort of a YouTube video about some ideas the other day. So I'll link it. I'll have to look it up, but I will link it in this text document. You can check it out, see what he has to say. But yeah, being like exploring some of those less common phrases is going to really help you. And even if you're not like 100% confident with them, even trying to vary your language is going to really help you. I don't necessarily have anything under like organization except for try to avoid run-on sentences. So like I said, a sentence should only have 3, maybe 4 ideas. So dependent or independent clauses. It really depends on like what you're writing. But yeah, 3 big ideas. A sentence should only have 3 or maybe 4 ideas. And then if you have more to say, start a new sentence. You can then use linking words, etc., to join them together, and this will boost your score here. Yeah, and then for language, yeah, just the same thing about using some more complex writing. But I mean, there's no like big grammar mistakes that jump out to me. Oh, communicative, also just like don't use contractions in informal writing. So that's a simple thing that you can do. Also stay on topic. For example, here you spent a lot of time talking about movies and cartoons when it should have been more about talking about books and maybe novels and storytelling, maybe even like oral storytelling potentially. So yeah. But yeah, other than like, but I don't have anything else really to add under language because I felt that was pretty much your strong point here. Okay, perfect. So let's see what we might give you. So I always have sort of like their marking criteria that I like to refer to. And like I said, your biggest problem here is going to be under content. Had you responded to all of the prompts? Had you included your opinion? Had you included your reasons? It would have been an easy 5. However, we're missing a lot. So and we sort of veered off topic, talking about movies when we really should have been focusing on books. And like I said, that it would have been a really easy fix if we would have just like talked about like, because I'm sure Robin Hood was originally a book or something. You could have talked about that. But anyway, so the content, I'm probably going to give like a 2, possibly a 3. But like it's a pretty big deal that yeah, I think all of those 3 points that I made. So staying on topic, making sure that you have all the points covered. Communicative achievement. So here, a 3 uses the conventions of the communicative tasks effectively to hold the target reader's attention and communicate straightforward and complex ideas as appropriate. And then a 5 would have been uses the conventions of the task to communicate. Uses the conventions of communicative tasks to with sufficient flexibility. So that flexibility has to do with using sort of like more of the complex phrases and like the lesser known structures. So with sufficient flexibility to communicate complex ideas in an effective way. And also here, just because like this was a bit vague, like those sort of things. Yeah, that would like sort of bring your mark down a little bit. Holding the target reader's attention with ease, fulfilling all communicative purposes. So I'm probably gonna like, so it was nicely written, but you could have like done more to use some better phrases, show off a little bit better like what you're capable of doing, because it's obvious that you're totally capable of writing. That is a no-brainer. Yeah, we can just maybe like learn. Judging by your writing, I don't think that fixing up some of those more complex phrases will be really hard to do. It's just a matter of like looking into them and sort of like getting a little bit comfortable and just experimenting a bit. Yeah, so communicative achievement, I think I'm going to put it maybe at like a 3, possibly a 4. Put it here. So organization, we did have like some of those run-on sentences, some problems here with like clarity. However, on the whole, like it was pretty logical, pretty straightforward. So I think you would get sort of like a fairly high. So a 3 is text is well organized and coherent, using a variety of cohesive devices and organizational patterns to generally good effect. And a number 5 is text is well organized, coherent, whole, using
A variety of cohesive devices and organizational patterns with flexibility. So I don't think that we're quite there yet, but I'm going to give you maybe a 3. And then language. I think language is going to be a pretty good one. High marking one for you. So a 3 uses the range of vocabulary, including less common lexes appropriately. So we do have a number of less common words throughout, and they were all used appropriately. Great use of collocations, vile, depicted, yeah, stuff like that. So he uses a range of simple and complex grammatical forms with control and flexibility, and you've definitely shown that you're able to use both simple and complex forms. Just number 5 would have been uses a range of vocabulary, including less common lexes, effectively and precisely. It uses a wide range of simple and complex forms with a full control, flexibility, and sophistication. So I feel like you didn't really push yourself enough to get a 5 here. And then, of course, areas of present are just slips or less common structures. See, there it is. Like if present related to less common structures or words and or are slips. So we are allowed to make mistakes. And we can make mistakes in those less common structures. So it does pay off to try them, because that is sort of your key to getting a 5. But yeah, so I'm imagining that you'll probably get pretty high, maybe a 4. I'm gonna give you a 4, because while the structures weren't as interesting and sophisticated as they could have been, you did have a really nice range of vocabulary that you used, and really nice collocations. Your word choices were really natural, really nice. So yeah, so I think that's really good. Okay, so I hope that this helps. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to send me a note. And thanks so much for submitting your work, so I can share it online. And also, if anybody else is would like to have my feedback on their writing, just send me a note, and I can let you know how to book a writing correction from myself, and I can provide you with the document with all the questions, and we can go from there. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Okay, bye.